with your you know, with
Yeah.
the switcher. So yeah, that's it. It's stuck in my mind now. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to get a sponsorship from Guinness. I'm
Hi
driving
guys.
loads of traffic. Yeah. How are
Hello.
you, Anna?
Good. On my way over to the gym with my daughter. So I'm gonna have to at one point turn off and then come back again when things settle down.
No worries at all. Um, I think I think we can get started, Frank, if you're ready. I'm not going to be doing much talking today, guys. I'm going to hand it over to Frank. My voice is nearly gone, so I'll hand it over to you now.
Cool. So, I don't know if folks know who I am. So I'm Frank. Just a bit of a background. I was in software sales for over a decade. My last gig, I used to lead a sales team of about 50 people. Then I got very pissed about the fact that the only way to scale a company and build more pipeline and generate revenue was through more headcount. So then I started this company called Salesforge and a bunch of other forges where we're essentially helping companies, all sorts of companies, predominantly in the US and also agencies, to scale more pipe with the least possible headcount. So we do that currently across cold email and LinkedIn. We integrate with Clay. We partner with Clay in multiple different ways as well. We invested in Clay, blah, blah, blah. So we do a lot on the we'll call it, GTM engineering front. Um, our sales team is very tiny. Like in generally, who does demos or whatever, who pushes pipe sort of forward. It's about typically 4 to 6 people, and we do over 500 demos a month. Just to give you about an idea about our velocity. That also means we onboard hundreds of customers on a monthly basis, and we do that in multiple different ways. But about 70% of the demo count is on inbound, and I would say the other 30% is on outbound, and that's just demo. So you don't need to do a demo with us to actually to buy any of our stuff, right? So you can just go and just buy it. But that's a good kind of metric kind of to anchor on. So we do a lot of generally a lot of activity, whether that's on called email or LinkedIn. So this session is specifically about I would say LinkedIn. And so at any moment, because we have quite a small group, probably it's the first week, of January coming back or people busy or whatever they're doing. It's also Christmas today, the Orthodox Christmas. So maybe that's also has an impact. But so the idea is to talk about LinkedIn and so that it's not me just doing a monologue or anything. Feel free to just jump right in, unmute yourself, and just ask me any questions. But to help you kind of structure, sort of LinkedIn a bit, when does it work and when it doesn't work? I typically like to use some sort of tiny little framework. I'm not big into kind of theory, etc. personally, but you need to get your sort of head right. And so I typically call this the 5 pillars on LinkedIn, and there's 4 pillars on email. But 5 pillars on LinkedIn, or what you need to kind of invest is what I call the infrastructure. Um, and the infrastructure piece means just like we have a problem called email, we also have a problem on LinkedIn when it comes to scaling. So you need to do what's called horizontal scaling. And you because typically each profile, and I typically recommend to go down the what I call the organic path rather than in-mail path because in-mail converts less than the organic path. So on the organic path, you can literally connect with to about 100 people on a weekly basis typically. And from that, you're going to get, I don't know, 30 to 50% reply rates, which is average. Sorry, not replies, acceptance rate. And then from that, typically you're going to get 10 to 40% reply rates, right? So this is how typically metrics look on LinkedIn. So the metrics are pretty decent, but the thing is, you can't really scale that. So the only way to scale really is through more profiles. So we have over 30 LinkedIn profiles in our active, so let's go to management. So we have a lot of profiles. They are all more or less optimized. Some of them are not optimized on purpose to test something, to see if less optimized profiles lead to worse results. So we do a lot of different testing on our own infra. But like, if you think about the different way as well, because we also actually do we scale email, is that for every positive reply that you're going to get on cold email, you're going to get probably 2 or 3 on LinkedIn. So if you have a very tiny TAM in particular, like you definitely want to unlock LinkedIn. And I can't see any company being a serious company if you don't have like 3 to 5 LinkedIn profiles at least in play. So we definitely typically push every single customer to like 5 is what good looks like. You need to figure out where to get at least 5 profiles because that will make a huge difference. Then instead of connecting just one profile, I go 2 profiles. So that makes a huge difference. And typically we so on the infrastructure piece,
Hey
you
Frank,
want to yeah go.
Just a quick question. You said 3 to 5 LinkedIn profiles. So mainly you are talking about different company profiles, or
No, for a
because
single
personal
company, like
profile
let's say
is
you
only
work,
one.
I mean, let's say you work with a company, doesn't matter which company it is, you have to have a default onboarding requirement of sourcing 5 profiles.
Okay, so for more personal people, they should have their
Yeah, I'll give you an
LinkedIn
example.
profile open, and they
Yeah,
should give you your
yeah,
password, or how does it work?
So I'll give an example. Let's say if I would run an agency, I never run an agency. I always used to sell some piece of software. But like if I would run an agency, let's say, and I would talk to somebody and said, "Hey, do you want me to do lead gen for you?" I'll do that across cold email, LinkedIn. I'm gonna use Clay. The person's gonna say yes. So in my onboarding docs, what I will stipulate is that I expect from you, meaning you, your company, kinda, to get me 5 profiles that I can use. That's a kind of default expectation that you should have in mind. So then these 5 profiles should be connected to a software that does LinkedIn automation. Guess what? Salesforce does LinkedIn automation, and you can connect unlimited LinkedIn profiles. So you hook up these profiles. You also assign the email accounts to these profiles because when you're doing a multi-channel sequence, you want to make sure you have the identity set between the LinkedIn profile and the mailboxes, especially if you want to use the same name. So yeah, it's something you stipulate. It's something where you're asking the customer to connect their profiles to the automation software, so you can use their property, meaning their LinkedIn profiles, which is an extension of their company, their website, to then do the engagement. And guess what? Your job is going to be much easier. It's much going to be easier for you to retain the customer, to build pipeline, etc., because you're leveraging their profiles, which are typically not leveraged to the brim, which means to the 100% of capacity, which means connecting to 100 people per week per profile. They don't do that typically. Guess what? Like, let's say if I gotta put 20 LinkedIn profiles into a single sequence, I pretty much know that every single week I'm connecting with 2,000 people. I'm sending connection requests, 2,000 individuals, and I expect 40 to 50% sort of to accept, and then to get double-digit reply rates. If we just look at LinkedIn, with email, naturally you get better reply rates. But the problem with email, like everybody knows, is that reply rates on emails are typically like 1 to 5%, in cold email, if you're doing a good job. Otherwise it's zero. And on LinkedIn, like even if you're doing like a average job, you're still gonna get double-digit reply rates. Like LinkedIn is also a bit easier because people can see your profile, right? So like one of the reasons why people kind of respond back to you is because you have the authority, they can check you out a bit, etc. Because again, LinkedIn acts as the extension of your site, right? So, yeah. Any additional questions on that?
So just Frank, on that point, what would you just say to people with smaller companies, whether it's an agency or a software company, who don't have 5 employees and they can't use those LinkedIn profiles? Is there anywhere where you can recommend that they source those LinkedIn profiles to send from, or do you want to
So
get into that?
here's my question to you: do you have a girlfriend?
I can't be talking
I
about
have to
that now,
find one.
Frank. Which
So I'm
one?
in that boat right now. I am alone, like I'm a founder, so it's not an agency. So that's why I want to know. I have to ask people, maybe family members.
Yes, I mean, like it's the
Okay.
next obvious thing. If you have nobody in your Slack instance to ask people, hey guys, could you please really connect for our company to build actually a pipeline? Like if you don't have these individuals, the next best thing you're thinking of, who do I know that doesn't use a LinkedIn profile? And that's typically your dad, mom, girlfriend, wife, whatever, brother, that don't give monkeys about LinkedIn. That's totally fine. You could just ask nicely because guess what? If like they're likely to say yes, a lot of them. All they have to do is connect their profile, give them the image cover, and ready to rock and roll, right? And so this is the next best thing. And there's a couple other things that you can do in the market. One is we're doing this sort of growth hack that we're doing, where we're going to local colleges/universities, and we're onboarding students from those universities. So we have a funnel there on how we build that. But essentially, just think of anybody like a pool of humans, let's call it. These could be students, elderly people, whatever they are. Essentially, people that don't use profiles, that don't care about LinkedIn, but they have some sort of incentive to give you their profile. So in the case of students, students want to improve their network on LinkedIn, and they're very lazy to do that. So we can help them to do that by connecting with a lot of cool, CEOs, CMOs, whatever. So that's one hack. Yeah.
Frank, sorry. So the thing that I'm having a little bit of a hard time to understand this one is, okay, it's one thing for somebody that doesn't give a rat's ass about his profile,
Yeah.
because in a certain way it's like, okay, you get to have it, but you will have to be replying from their account, so you'll have to have access to it all the time. That would be point one. Point two, how do you actually deal with those? Like, you get their emails, like what's the point of actually having all those messages on their profile, and then afterwards what do you do with them? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't understand how you step from that to actually having and making sure that those clients are yours. Do you convert them into a newsletter? What do you do with them? Like, okay, you have all those people that agree somehow. You got to figure out on how to make sure that you don't lose them, because they are obviously your prospect. And then what? I guess I'm having a hard time to understand this passage, I suppose.
So, so in a typical software, to get any user into the software, you have to invite them. So we have a way to invite these people, students, let's say in this particular example, into Salesforce for them to connect their LinkedIn profile. They would connect their LinkedIn profile to a workspace called Salesforce One, which is our mothership. They're connected to the mothership, one of many, many profiles. And that is one additional, it's like a mailbox, one additional entity, right? One additional LinkedIn profile that's been connected as part of a bigger pool. The other things that we do is we optimize these profiles. So all of them get a title, they get a image cover, etc. So
yeah, you make them like they were your employee, basically.
yeah,
Correct?
the alternative, yes. So the alternative that business owners, etc., look at, what do they used to look at before this, or like what is the typical path? They would hire what they would typically tell me, Frank, I would just get a random SDR somewhere in the world, and I would use their LinkedIn profile to do my outreach. This is what they typically would tell you. I was like, okay,
Okay.
cool. How much you pay for that? And he's like, I'll pay them like 500 to $1,000, but really, I just want their LinkedIn profile. This is what they typically tell me. I was like, okay, cool. So they don't have the let's call it the outside the box thinking, to kind of create, a some sort of, let's call it growth hack, whatever you want to call this, but essentially source profiles from a pool of humans that could give you
Yes.
the profiles for something in return. And it has to be for a period of time. Period of time means, in our case, these profiles would be in the pool for 6 to 12 months period. So quite a long period that would be used to build up, ramp up networks, send messages, receive replies, and then use them to drive towards a particular conversion action, which could be anything, whether that's I want people to go and get on my webinar, or I want them to book a demo, or I want, for example, I reached out to all churn accounts, for example, and said, hey guys, I saw that you were a customer of us last year. I was wondering, what was your experience like? You could extract competitive followers on LinkedIn, reach out to all of them, and let's say there's whatever, let's say an example, we do LinkedIn automation again. I would go extract all followers from any page, and then
Yeah.
I would go and reach out and say, hey, do you do LinkedIn outreach? And then I would use one of the student profiles as an example, or it could be also my profile, doesn't matter which profile it is.
Yeah.
So we treat every profile the same, by the way. And guess what? The profile that has the best performance are not founders. It's actually a support rep in our company. Why he has the best performance, I don't know. No, like maybe it's a pattern interrupt. I cannot explain. But if I open my dashboard, the support guy is always crushing it. So it's one of the profiles. So this kind of goes to say that it's not always about what the title is. Sure, it can improve a bit, but like just gets, like, so this is also to say we have also people that doing the outreach, they come with different areas of the business function, meaning it could be a support rep to a person in marketing, content, to engineer even, whatever that is. And you connect
Mm-hmm.
these profiles from your company, right? On the student front, you give them an imaginary title, whatever that title is. And then the last resort, what I call, there's also another source, I could say. There's probably more sources, but like 3 sources typically. Like it's either your own team slash relative sort of. Then 2 is some sort of growth hack. You can think about what the growth hack is. 3 is to rent profiles. And there's a bunch of companies out there that do LinkedIn profile renting. That could be companies like Mirror Profiles, Accountify. There's kind of few of them that provide that. And that's kind of the shady, the gray area of the market. And so you go there. So there's 2 types of profiles that you typically can procure from these vendors, let's call it that way, or marketplaces rather. One is they would create for you avatars. So these are truly fake profiles, and they try to make them as real as they can. That's option one. And there are downsides and upsides to that. And then option two is to actually rent real human profiles that don't give, again, monkeys about the profiles, but they would love to get paid for that profile every single month. So that marketplace will pay them, I don't know, let's say $50. So imagine if I would pay you $50 for your profile, but the marketplace will sell that profile for 100, $150. So they're making quite a good margin there on that, and they just scale it up. So I know that one of the marketplaces that I know when it comes to real humans, they manage over 20,000 real humans on the supply side. 20,000 real people's profiles on LinkedIn are being used for an outreach of some company, software company, whatever that is, right? And it's a thing, So these are really the three sources of how to build up the infrastructure. But like at what level, things start become, visibly differently, or like it has, huge impact on your pipe. I would say it's 5 profiles. And then the more you do, naturally, the greater it is. And you want to do more of that once you're going to start seeing the reply rates on LinkedIn versus email, right? Where on email you have the spam issues to deal with, right? And then on LinkedIn you don't have the spam issues to deal with, but the challenge on LinkedIn is the scaling bit, right? So the profiles bit. But like we combine both, right? So because both works, because there's also people that don't respond on LinkedIn, they'll respond on email and vice versa. So yeah.
Frank, well, like from an agency point of view, I've been talking to someone who's like pretty well known, like in general, like I said, somewhat of a celebrity. They've got really good LinkedIn, but they don't have time effectively to like leverage that thing. I was talking about, because I've done it personally using like HeyRach, and I've looked at your tool as well, and it's had a really good success. But if I'm going to a client and say, I can automate your LinkedIn, and they go, oh, but what happens if LinkedIn find out, or like if he lost his account, this guy I'm talking to, and he came back and went, oh, you just caused me to like lose this account with hundreds of thousands of followers. How am I protected? Am I on the hook for it? Like, and what do the tools mean that? Because I'm just kind of worried about saying, right, I can do this to you. Then he gets banned and goes, what the heck happened there?
But typically, the more followers connections you have, the less likely you want to give it to somebody to manage it. It's just typically not a thing. And this is an example why you want to use rented profiles. There's a lot of companies that will say, I will never use my profiles. Or it doesn't matter, like my own property, I will never use. And you'll say, totally fine. I have a way to rent some profiles. You want to do that? And it's like, yeah, sure. Like, so the budget is not a problem for a lot of these companies, by the way. And because you can explain the maths and how it works, etc. And you're going to say, yeah, it's going to cost you $100, $150 just per profile for us to procure that, blah, blah, blah. So there are a lot of people on LinkedIn, including myself, that I would just not give my profile. But then, see, I am using my own profile for automation already, and I've been doing. My profile is 15 years old, so just kind of there's a bit of a caveat here. A lot of profiles on LinkedIn are not that old. I'm probably one of the oldest profiles out there. So the profile is very old, has been used across multiple automation softwares on LinkedIn. And there are a few things kind of that you have to, the reason why things go south is because you are, for example, giving your profile to be managed by a VA somewhere in Southeast Asia. That is a concern. Concern two is you are using this LinkedIn profile for multiple automation softwares. Big no-no. Guess what? These automation softwares do not talk to each other, so they will fuck you up. So do not do that. The other reasons why you get banned or suspended is you're using a Chrome extension that manipulates the UX of LinkedIn. You will be in trouble. Injecting JS into LinkedIn is not stupid. They can see that you're manipulating the experience, etc. And they have banned plenty of Chrome extensions, etc. and cease and desist, blah, blah, blah. Then what else we've got there? People that scrape LinkedIn organic, not Sales Navigator. If you scrape LinkedIn organic, you will get suspended. The other thing is when you get suspended pretty much like instantly, sort of, which is so I'll give you an example of what happened multiple times, not just to me, but with other companies. So imagine I hire an intern. An intern has like less than 100 connections on LinkedIn. And I'll tell the intern, can you please do research on these 50 people on LinkedIn? You'll get banned. Guess why you get banned?
Because they've went from nothing to suddenly there's a lot of volume for it.
Yeah, it's a very unusual behavior. There's essentially no activity, no engagement, nothing, and then suddenly there's a huge spike, looks like a bot behavior, you get auto banned, and then getting your profile back is actually pretty not impossible. It's impossible to do with the ID that you submitted. The way that you recover your LinkedIn profile, by the way, is to get a second ID, like a driver's license or something. Essentially, you need another ID, and you got to get back on LinkedIn. I know a lot of people that done that. So essentially, in the system, they have association with ID 1. You're kind of perma-banned on that, and then you can do association with sort of ID 2, I've been told. But the thing is, the reason why things go south is because you have to think like a machine, sort of like LinkedIn, like an automation software. Like, don't do what I call stupid stuff. Don't run multiple automation software, etc. When you even like test another LinkedIn automation software, disconnect from the previous one, connect to the next one, right? People just don't do that. So yeah, think like there's what's called human error. Typically, the reason why something didn't go to plan is human error.
Okay. Interesting.
It's softwares really because it's human error. I can give you an example that what's the other reason, by the way, you get banned on LinkedIn is somebody, a human, will go and manually report your LinkedIn profile. Meaning manual action, goes on your profile, clicks report, is one of the reasons why you're gonna get blocked, banned, etc. People don't think about it, but it is true.
Yeah, and how does it for like obviously for guys like you and for HeyReach and all these kind of other platforms, because that is like almost like not obviously not for you the raison d'etre, but like how are HeyReach still on LinkedIn? Surely LinkedIn are gonna be like, right, your whole thing is doing against our T's and C's.
So this is a question that can't be properly answered because there's no way to answer this properly. There's just some assumptions on why some companies got cease and desist, why somebody's got rid of LinkedIn, while others didn't, like us, and why we will never maybe get. So it's just assumptions. The reason why you can never validate anything that happens is because it's not like we're talking to the LinkedIn. Nobody talks to the LinkedIn team, whatever, It's just not a thing. So the way that people are protecting their businesses is through multiple different ways, from changing the jurisdiction that you're in is one of the ways that you can protect yourself and never get a cease and desist potentially. And I think jurisdiction is probably the main thing, is the assumption here. So where you are based in the world dictates whether you gonna get one or not. So to give an idea, probably, so let's call it the latest assumption is essentially if LinkedIn has what's called legal presence, they have essentially an office on the ground, you are in trouble. Very simple. So you can just check where all LinkedIn offices are in the world, and it kind of gives you an idea, like if you're looking to ever, just create a LinkedIn automation software, you will get the cease and desist very fast.
Even though it's the cease and desist, it's like, but it's what I've been more. Obviously, that's not great getting the legal action, but like, could they not just delete your account? Like, why would they not just go and delete HeyReach in this breaches terms and conditions rather than cease and desist?
No, but they're just after, like, generally speaking, like, let's say you're the legal team of LinkedIn.
Yep.
You want to operate in the legal boundaries. Where do you have legal ground, let's call it that way? In the places where you have an office, you're actually registered. And LinkedIn is not registered everywhere, just to let you know. Right? So, but you can take actions against particular companies if you have the legal basis and you have like typically when you have an office, that means you have you're incorporated also there, right?
Yeah.
So they can do that, and their legal team can use that local office then to go and engage with you in multiple different ways, from cease and desist, blocking, etc. And it's just an assumption, right? It's just like it's just a take. Like nobody really knows, and people will not publicly talk about it because they don't know. Like the CEO of Apollo doesn't know. Sure, he says he's talking to Apollo, blah blah blah. But like these guys, LinkedIn are also not stupid. It's not like they're gonna share anything with Apollo. So it's just all the assumption is just what you hear through the grapevine, kind of in through WhatsApp communities, whatever, But the thing is, the way that there's a bit of if somebody's in Europe, incorporated, etc., there are potentially sort of good news on that front, which is that it's not that it's good news, but it's that there are some people, as of very recent, are trying to fight LinkedIn and sending LinkedIn cease and desist, actually, because it is illegal, actually, what they're doing on the European turf. So there will be definitely things happening on the LinkedIn front. But at the end of the day, LinkedIn works, right? So you do generate pipe. The latest survey that I run on LinkedIn says that LinkedIn generates the most pipe, 250 votes. That was my survey that I won. So it generates the most pipe. People want to do it. People keep doing it, and the only way that this could be solved for good is LinkedIn opens their API to all the vendors, including ourselves, which is something that the Europeans that send them cease and desist want to happen. They want them to open the API, and then for automation software to actually integrate with LinkedIn rather than doing it through what's called the user access. This is how it's done. So you essentially you log into these softwares, and so with this is how it's being used to actually do various actions. But what LinkedIn doesn't really like. So one thing as well for you guys to be aware. And this is also when you're talking to your customers, right? If you're running as an agency, what LinkedIn is concerned about is scraping, data extraction, and monetization of that data. They hate it. But what is still sort of, let's call it okay, is crafting a message and sending that off. Post scheduling. That is assisting a user to do an action. But data extraction and then making millions of dollars from the LinkedIn's data, that's a no-no. So there are tools, LinkedIn automation tools, that do scraping within LinkedIn. These platforms are more in trouble. Guess what? We do not do scraping in Salesforce. We do not scrape. And that's another way. So you can try to think about, try to get out of the way of the scraping. Like everybody wants to scrape, but they just don't do it in the core software. This is why you build big softwares like Apollo and Outreach and Sales, they do not do LinkedIn automation, and they do not do officially scraping right? So this is like a no topic. But like we believe that assisting a user writing a message or post scheduling is a normal action. Like why wouldn't you assist the user to do that, right? It's a true automation software, right? But yeah, everybody agrees typically if I'm harvesting your data, Andrew, and then I'm making millions of dollars of your data, Andrew, you're probably not happy, So
yeah, so as long as you don't cause LinkedIn to lose money, then they don't really care.
Yes, and see some of the things LinkedIn will let it fly because LinkedIn believes it actually builds value, but they will never talk about it. So the belief is that if you're automating some parts of activity like messages, etc., LinkedIn actually doesn't mind about it. But actually, that's the reason why some of the companies pay for the sales nav, etc. Blah blah blah. So they're not always, but they will never talk about it publicly, right? They're just stances, like no automation, like nothing, right? But like there are things like post scheduling, like Taplio software, for example. There's other softwares, for example, that are being used on top of LinkedIn, and you're just scheduling posts and you fly. Like, what's the problem there, right? Not big of a problem. But what they really hate is when it degrades the experience. Or they don't make money out of it. So like harvesting data, like they're losing I don't know how much money, but let's say hundreds of millions of dollars. LinkedIn is losing every year because due to this. So of course they're going to take action.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a bit on that topic. But this will change every year. But like let's put it also this way. If you are trying to become, what I call a LinkedIn or outreach agency, don't do that. Very risky. Imagine if next year LinkedIn will change something, your whole business will just go to zero. So you do something that is, where there's no policeman, which is, cold email and cold calling. That will always exist. LinkedIn, it works, but maybe something will happen, it will not work, and everything will go to zero, right? And this could happen to us, to HeyReach, and whatever you name it, right? So something will change and just. So again, these corporations, they're very big, they may be very slow, but they're not stupid. So something may happen. So don't build your business necessarily on don't just also assume that this will be also there in a year's time, 2 years' time, etc. So capitalize on it while you can. Like I definitely say do it, but just imagine if it didn't exist like tomorrow. What would you do? Have you diversified your revenue streams, your type of customers, the work that you're doing? Are you doing GTM engineering? Are you doing RevOps with HubSpot, whatever? Do diversify. This is also why we have 7 softwares. We don't have one. We're very diversified. We have 2 channels. We're going to do cold calling as the next channel at scale. And we diversify. So in case LinkedIn goes down, we know that the demand for cold email and on cold calling will go up, right? So maybe there will be another channel that will pop up, but highly unlikely. Okay, so that's infrastructure. Spend a lot of time and kind of securing your profiles. Yeah, but I don't think there's a guidance. And so, yeah, the problem is that there's a lot of user error why things get banned. Try and stay away from scraping within the core software of automation. and let the scraping to be done in a separate software like Phantom Buster, for example. That's an example strategy. So we would tell people to use Phantom Buster in a separate software to extract any forms of data that they need, and then leverage that data within Salesforce or any other tools to do something extra. Yeah, that's how to think about it. This particularly is a problem also in big, large, mid-market enterprise companies. If you're ever talking to them, if you're gonna tell them that the software that you're using to execute sales does scraping on LinkedIn, they do not want to hear anything about it. They don't want to hear in the topic that you're saying rented profiles. Your credibility just goes like this, like any like shady stuff like that. Like this is like really shady stuff for enterprise and big companies. Do not even mention this. You can say things like, we can growth hack it. Like, are you up for growth hacking it? It may not be 100%, strictly within TNC, so some of the platforms, but are you into that? And if they say yes, then you can start talking about it. But like, otherwise, don't even open that topic. Cool. So the next thing is like orchestration. So scaling outreach utilizing what's called a safe software. I would say any software that has been around for a while is a safe software. So all software, like most of the softwares are not most of the software, all softwares are safe. You cannot say that one software is not safe to use. The problem is, as I said, typically user error. I cannot even think of an example, even in our business, where it was our fault. It was always a user error, or it was an error that you cannot explain what has gone off, but they said they made a lot of changes in the last week. Like essentially there's some sort of change in user behavior which sort of signals LinkedIn something, right? But like if like these softwares are very stable just generally, right? Ask, Hey, Reach, whatever, like generally speaking. So there's not much, it's very stable kind of execution. They're always connected, there's always running, etc. They all have hard caps, like ask in terms of how many activities you can do per day. So for example, typically we recommend to connect with like anywhere between 20 to 40 people per day, like max. Do a maximum of, by the way, one hint on that. Do not do more than one view profile action. Anybody knows why viewing a profile through an automation is pretty dangerous when it comes to banning? Because viewing profile as an action is very closely related to scraping. For me to scrape the profile of Andrew, I would need to build an automation to access Andrew's profile, scrape it, and extract it, and do some stuff. So like viewing profiles is kind of closely related to the scraping behavior. So if you're looking to do a view profile action in automation, only do it once, and it's always my first step. Step 1, view profile. Step 2, blank LinkedIn connection request. And then I do 2 messages on LinkedIn. That's really what I do, to me. Like it's that simple, and it works pretty well. But then naturally I also add email into this. So I think what I wanted to say about not safe software. So there used to be softwares. I think many of them do not work anymore. Softwares that rely on a Chrome extension. So if you seeing LinkedIn automation softwares and something to do with Chrome extensions, I would not use them, just generally speaking. Again, LinkedIn is not stupid. LinkedIn does identify, change in behavior through Chrome extensions, especially through the browser, and something is happening. So it's better to be using what's called cloud-based softwares like us. And there's other softwares where something runs on the machine, like LinkedIn Helper, for example, right? So that's just another example. If something runs on the machine, and it mimics user behavior in the machine, blah, blah. But otherwise, anything that's Chrome extension related, I would try and stay away, essentially from that path, especially because there's a lot of evidence last year where Chrome extensions got banned because essentially they changed the experience and LinkedIn doesn't like that. So essentially when the user count on these extensions keeps on increasing, it gets on LinkedIn's radar, and that's when things go south. Essentially, you have too many people using the same extension, so you want to hide under the radar in the front of the big boys, the Google, the Microsoft, the LinkedIn. You want to hide in front of them. So Chrome extension gives patterns away essentially to LinkedIn. So I think that's the only other thing I want to say about orchestration. So plenty of good softwares out in the market. Typically, all softwares charge per seat. The difference with us is we charge for usage instead of seats. We believe in usage-based pricing. So that's why you can connect unlimited profiles and then just pay for the usage, which means connects, DMs, etc. And That's it. Audiences, right targeting, super important. On LinkedIn, what we found actually is like, so you need to scale, of course. You need to just use the right software. You need to target the right people, and there's a bunch of different things you can do on LinkedIn. So I'm going to drop quite a few things that we do on LinkedIn. So right now, for example, one of the things that we do is it's a typical stuff that you will know, but maybe you can ask and maybe validate some other audiences. But one of them, for example, would be a user has entered the pricing page, they have not signed up, and we will go and reach out on LinkedIn. We score the user, reach out on LinkedIn. That's one. So de-anonymization. We have 4 million pages across 6 websites. We have a lot of traffic. We can de-anonymize a lot of stuff and engage with a lot of people, qualify and engage. Then point 2 is we use a tool called Jungler. Jungler is a tool that essentially extracts signals from LinkedIn, very similar to Trigify. I think Goji Berry, there's quite a few of them. They kind of are in a similar sort of space as to something happens on LinkedIn and it's particular keyword from a particular person or whatever segment in the country, and you would just want to pull that into a Slack channel, into a sequence, whatever, and just execute. So we do a lot of that. So anybody that talks about sort of LinkedIn automation or whatever, like emails landing spam, etc., we qualify that and we fire off. So that's something LinkedIn. It could be also there could be other kind of things that you do, but naturally it has to have a LinkedIn URL, right? So negative sentiment, positive sentiment, competitor mentions, pain point mentions on LinkedIn. So that's more on maybe the posting part. The one that I really personally like is somebody does a lead magnet on LinkedIn, and I go and just extract all of that. It's a very typical. I think a lot of people do that. Guys, if you don't do that, I would be surprised, to be honest. But I assume everybody does that already. But now, the other one, which is kind of similar, what I really like is when a competitor has spent tens of thousands of dollars to do a thought leadership ad, and it has thousands and thousands of likes and comments, and I go and extract that. So the competitor has spent to build up the whole audience on the post, and I just go and extract all of that. That is fantastic, by the way. I spent nothing on these ads, but all the people that liked and commented, etc., I got the whole list. So this is, I called it so you definitely want to look at these posts where you're seeing sponsored by or brand partnership with Apollo, God knows whatever. So, and if you look at the post, you're like, oh, it's actually a really good post. I think it's going to fly. Which means they're going to spend on it like for weeks and months. Some posts are for months. I remember Eric Novoslavsky had this one post. It was like for half a year. Half a year, the guy had these posts sponsored. It's crazy. But anyway, so this is like a gold mine. Whoever does for leadership ads to do that. And so all you do is you just click on the save button actually on the post, and then actually have the bank of all the essentially posts where I want to extract the audiences. So this is another sort of gold mine, I would say. What else we have? We have webinar attendees, so competitors do webinars, or you can just search for like lead gen webinar. Somebody does a lead gen webinar, and they have like 200 people attending the webinar, and you look at the guy, and the guy's like full of shit maybe on the webinar, and you're like, I can do a better job than this guy, and you can just reach out to the audience and kind of offer them, cheaper service, better service, different angle, whatever, Or let's say this webinar is about cold email, and you would offer the LinkedIn outreach as a piece, right? So you offer the adjacent. So that works pretty well. Yeah, and actually you can extract a bunch of data on LinkedIn Sales Nav. The best audiences, so everybody will say this, that the best audience on Sales Nav, guess which one it is, guys? Anybody has an idea? No?
You mentioned support earlier.
Which one?
Support?
Support. No,
people who have just those who have just changed their jobs.
Yes, that's a good one. Yes, that's a very good one, by the way. Yes. That's my second best, I would say. But what typically people say that the gold mine is like this one filter. It's the people that have posted in the last 90 days.
I was going to say active. I had that.
Yeah, so like the people that are active like this, because the people that are the most active on LinkedIn are the most likely to respond to you. So that's a gold mine. So definitely use that filter. So this is particularly important when you have a huge list and you're trying to figure out in your head how to, trim it down. But you still want to drive the maximum output. You have essentially capacity constraints, but you're trying to figure out how could I, constrain it in a way that this is like the golden list. And guess what? The people that are the most active on LinkedIn are the most likely to respond back to you. That's how it works. So they definitely use that one. So a lot of salespeople, like on the ground and big sales teams, will typically tell you use that filter, use that filter, use that filter. And then naturally, I already mentioned this, extracting company followers of your competitors. Fantastic. This audience is solution and problem aware. So that could be definitely competitors. That could be also adjacent companies. So imagine, for example, we have integrated with SenseSpark. If somebody doesn't know SenseSpark is like the Loom alternative. It's a good, really good video solution. We integrate with them natively. So you can send a bunch of programmatic videos using SenseSpark. We also use them, by the way. And so we integrate with them. So we can definitely kind of publicize this thing like, hey, SenseSpark is natively integrated with Salesforce, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things I can do is I can reach out to all the followers of SenseSpark, and I can be like, hey, did you by any chance so are you by any chance using SenseSpark right now as videos? Like you can just ask that, or like Loom maybe as videos. I typically give like a couple of options. And then start like, do you use like in an outreach tool these videos or not, right? And there was a lot of them will say, yes, I'm a SenseSpark user. How do you know? and it's like, and then I would say, oh, we actually natively integrated with SenseSpark. Did you ever try Salesforce with SenseSpark as a power combo? And they're like, no, I'll go and check it out. So that's an example. So integration partners, so somebody like adjacent, to you. Then it could be communities. So RevOps community could be a community. What other communities? So SDR leaders of EMEA, like sometimes I would put the pavilion, whatever. There's a bunch of different communities. The right ICPs are congregating around, the right profiles. The communities have a lot of following. There could be some GTM engineering community, maybe, I don't know, GTM Cafe, there's one. There is, maybe like even extracting, like, let's say if you're into GTM engineering and if you're a big fan of Clay, you would go and extract the followers of Clay. Clay has over 100K followers. That means these people are fans of Clay, they use Clay, etc. And you can definitely build your lists of that following also quite nicely, right? That would be another one. So yeah, anybody else has any suggestions on the sort of the audiences and what they're seeing?
I would say for maybe not the audience, but back to your very first point about why the sport people did really well. I obviously was doing a lot of LinkedIn outreach, like from my old company doing sales, and I changed. I used to have like sales at this company, and my like connection acceptance request was way down. I then changed it to something like Gen AI, like enthusiast or something. So it doesn't mention sales, because the second you have sales in it, someone sees it, goes, right, I'm getting pitched the second I accept this. So I then changed it to AI growth associate. But just like it's the same stuff. I'm doing the exact same thing. Just doesn't look as salesy. So it's maybe if your connection request, if you look like you're going to sell them, people, I don't know, maybe it's like a UK or Europe, then people just like go, I'm not accepting that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in having this sort of a bit of a pattern drop in the headline. So if you look at my headline on LinkedIn, it says I make you bring home more bacon. So it's something totally different. So I always say create something unique for yourself. So when your ideal customer looks at your profile and your headline, it piques curiosity and they want to connect with you because you kind of look different to everybody else. But yes, if it just screams sales, or even if you're like there's only a few titles where maybe it makes sense to say that you are, you have that title of the company, like CEO, founder, etc., VP growth, like some cool titles. Other titles don't really matter much. Like, so you're better off telling me what problem you solve for me and how you could solve that, right? Problem. So yeah. All right. The last couple parts of messaging. The short thing about messaging, and what I've found actually works well. And so this is where there's a very big difference with email. So emails are much longer, and WhatsApp or LinkedIn messages, etc. They're very short. So short that you can just say, hey, Andrew, thanks. Good to connect. And then you're simply asking a question, just like you would ask somebody a question in a conference, in the bar, etc. So it has to be short and snappy. It's literally super mega short. And what you're trying to do is just start a conversation on LinkedIn. It's a social media. You're just, talking something back and forth. You're doing a bit of, tango there, right? So don't treat it as email. There's no signatures, no sign-offs, nothing. Just like, it's like me messaging my girlfriend, whatever. What are we doing tonight? It's that simple on LinkedIn. I think people overcomplicate it massively. I can tell you 90, pretty much 9%, 98% of all messages on LinkedIn is pretty much garbage. That's how bad it is. Really, really, really bad. So actually doing a good job on LinkedIn, like if you know like what to do, like you will see results because you're very different to everybody else. Everybody else, you can smell the template, you can smell the pitch, you can smell the automation, you can smell a lot of things essentially, and that's 99%. So the good news is because it's so bad, you can do a pretty good job, when it comes to the automation. You just have to think of what is a good job. It's like, what do I do manually when I'm gonna message Andrew? It's like, guess what? I'm gonna message Andrew after the session. Guess what I'm gonna ask him? Anybody wants to take a guess?
How
Was
did the
the
session
session?
go? What did you like about it? Yeah.
Say it again.
Then we had the same idea. It's like, how did the
Yeah.
session go? What did you like about it? Was there something in particular that attracted you? Come on, there is
Yes,
Yeah. So,
yes, but it's a bit too long. Bit too long. The way so if I would run a sequence on our audience here, it would be Andrew, comma, how was the session? Question mark. That's all. That's all it is.
I think because in the space, I'm now so cynical. Whenever anyone messages me, I'm like, that's definitely automated. Like every message, I'm just thinking it's not automated. But how, in terms of the kind of practicalities, once someone accepts your request, people talk about hate getting like pitch slapped like straight away. Do you have a certain like timing, how long you wait, or do you go straight away, or like is there any kind of science behind that, or is it just try and error?
No, like you immediately dive into the pain. Like give you an example. So like I immediately so blank connection request, I immediately fire the pain question. Like I typically try and do that. Or like it depends on the audience. I think, or like you have to match the copy with the audience to who you're targeting. So because you want to get to to a yes as quickly as possible. So for example, let's say there's a bunch of issues or were a bunch of issues with Outlook. So the question that I would ask on LinkedIn to an audience that follows an email infrastructure player or cold email player, it doesn't matter. You're gonna ask a question like, "Hey, are you seeing deliverability issues with Outlook right now?" Question mark. And that's how you start a conversation.
But would you send that as soon as the connection request is accepted, or just the like? Would you about 2 hours, 10 minutes, 2 days? I sometimes do a
Yeah,
day,
I think
so it's
that
more
doesn't matter.
natural.
Like, I think that doesn't like just don't overthink that part.
Okay.
Like trying to catch when people are online on LinkedIn, you're not able to do that. There's no way to track that, by the way, like technically speaking. So just whatever the software does, like just select 0 days or the shortest time possible. It's not going to be immediate. It'll fire. Like, don't worry about it. Kind of, that's how I think about it.
Okay.
Um, because there's no way to signal to me, like from a software standpoint, etc. When is the person online? The best time to fire is when the person is online on LinkedIn. That's the best time. But the problem is there's no way to figure this out. But you see this sort of, you see this, when you're talking to people if they are online or not. But it's not a data point that a software like us or HeyReach or others can optimize against. So as a human, as a salesperson, when I see that you're online, I'm pinging you. I know you're online. But when you're not online and you can see that you're not online, I know that you're not going to respond back to me.
Yeah.
Right? So just don't worry about it. I would say just fire, whatever.
Yeah.
Frank,
Cool.
I have a question about this. You said 70% of your leads are inbound. So
Mhm.
what are your strategies for messaging for inbound messages, or what have you seen? Because it's mainly reaching out.
Which channel is it?
So LinkedIn.
Okay, cool.
So
So,
the 70%,
so,
is it LinkedIn messages, inbounds is on LinkedIn? I'm not, I got this
so we
wrong.
as a software, there's a thing called we as a software or we as a business. So, is the question of we as a software or as a business, what do we do in
So
inbound?
70% of the inbound leads, what you get
Yeah.
is through
I'll tell you,
LinkedIn
it's
or
like
as a software or as a business? I'm not clear.
So, I mean, on inbound, we have multiple channels that we use to engage with users from the typical email. And guess what? We compute unique emails on inbound. You will get a uniquely computed email delivered to you. So it's not an onboarding template, so it'll get delivered to you. Then you will get a WhatsApp message. That's not a channel. Guess what? WhatsApp has a 10x higher reply rate than email. Then you can get contacted on LinkedIn, and a message on LinkedIn can read something along the lines of like, hey, Andrew, this is Frank with Salesforce. Let me know if you got any questions. That's all it is. It's that simple. That is called sales service. On WhatsApp, it's something along the lines of, hey, this is Frank from Salesforce. Let me know if you got any questions. That's all it is. It's not a sequence. You're just firing one-off message. Same on LinkedIn. So this is called sales service. So you want to do that because sales service drives a pipe. And then we also we apply voice LLMs on inbound to call our prospects if they didn't buy our stuff, if they ghosted us, essentially if they didn't end up, becoming a customer. So there's also further steps in the funnel where a calling function will be implemented, an agentic calling function. So yeah. So all 4 channels, WhatsApp, email, LinkedIn, and calling is active on the Forge today. So yeah. But some of the things naturally are not powered by us. Some of the things are powered through another piece of tech. But you wanna touch the person through multiple channels because you're not really sure on which channel they're more likely to engage with you. So because you touch them on 3, 4 channels, the conversion rates are very, very high on inbound. So yeah.
Will
Uh,
you, every single person, sorry, Frank, every single person, will you be touching it on every channel, or will you be passing certain amount of time in between? Like you will reach, let's say, this guy on LinkedIn in January, and let's say another channel, he didn't get back to you on email, and then if he didn't get back to you on WhatsApp, and then if he didn't get back to you on like in different months, or like will it be consequential? How will you do it?
So typical rule of thumb in outbound sales. Let's talk about outbound. Are we talking about outbound or inbound? It's very different. You mean outbound?
Said,
Like
no, outbound, like you outbound. I'm not talking inbound, outbound.
so on outbound front, the general rule of thumb is to knock on doors of your potential customer once a quarter. That means we have to be knocking on doors 4 times a year. And that's what you sell to a customer. So you build enough of infrastructure and strategy over a prolonged period of time, because one of the things that's very hard to control in outbound sales is the timing. When's the best time to reach out? And you can use all the intent data on the planet. You're still not gonna be doing a good job. So the top dogs in the space, us, Eric Novoslavsky, whatever, we do sometimes called carpet bombing, but essentially we reach out to everybody in our TAM once a quarter. So then it becomes a question, how do you do that? So how does, for example, Eric do that? Just to give you an idea. So when Mr. Eric Novoslavsky, he has a huge TAM of millions of businesses, he will send 1 email a quarter. That's an example. We don't send 1 email a quarter. We don't believe in 1 email a quarter thing. So we will do it differently. How different would that be? So typically the belief is to touch a prospect on 2 channels a quarter with 2 messages in each channel. So that means 2 emails, at least 2 emails. We want to be reaching out, sending that over to you on cold email, and then 2 LinkedIn messages will be fired over to you as well. So at least we believe that at least 2 channels should be in play if you're serious about sales generally. And actually, the more channels you stack, the better your performance. But the easiest channel to scale. Sorry, not just the easiest, but channels that you can scale cost effective, I would say, is email, LinkedIn. Cold calling has a huge cost. So we also do cold calling at scale, but the cost is much, much higher. And the audience that we're reaching out is different. So for cold calling, I would argue that only what's called the key accounts should be cold called. And there you need labor, right? So you need to, like, some agencies literally hire SDRs to cold call the key accounts. And the customer will pay you a ton of money just to take care of this. And the other thing, we do a bunch of other things. We also do SMS at scale. We also do WhatsApp at scale on outbound. So we will layer multiple layers, but these layers do not talk to each other. So we do not always do multi-channel sequence across, let's say, 5, 6 different channels. We do just layers. So the layer is a channel that we gonna activate for a period of time, could be 2 months, 3 months, and we're going to process a good chunk of our TAM with, let's call it WhatsApp outbound, as an example. Is WhatsApp outbound activity and the mobile numbers, etc., hooked up to the rest of the sequencing engine, let's say Salesforce. No, it's not, but it does talk to HubSpot, etc. But it does not run. So, step one is WhatsApp, step two is LinkedIn, step three is email. That's not how it works. It works in layers. And this is okay when you have a huge TAM. If you have a tiny TAM, so meaning 3,000 accounts or less, then it is a bit tricky. You definitely want to be doing proper multi-channel sequencing with different touch points in a single place. And there are softwares that do that with low scale, like Lemlis, for example, does a pretty good job of that. There's plenty of software that are not optimized for that, like so us, Instantly, HeyReach, etc. Because just a different way how the softwares are built. Yeah, but we even do direct mail, just to give you an idea. Our next test is doing postcards. You can send some postcards at scale. Awesome. So just kind of want to finish off social selling. I'm not going to talk in depth about social selling, but I think a lot of people understand that you need to warm up your audience. If your audience is on LinkedIn, you need to warm it up. If you're wondering what is warming up an audience, you can see Frank in the bathtub in my featured section doing a Margaret Robbie, a movie scene. So it's called a skit. And the job on LinkedIn actually is to educate your audience, is to educate the audience, but also to entertain. So I call that edutainment. And apart from kind of keeping your audience warm and always be on LinkedIn, etc., you also want to make sure your LinkedIn profile is optimized. And I've done even a whole session yesterday on that, but essentially, sorry, this is 1 second. Somebody's calling me like right now. Okay, cool. On my software, sorry, there was a bit of a noise on my end. Unoptimized LinkedIn profiles lead to worse results. There's quite a few things that you want to do to increase the chances of people actually connecting with you on LinkedIn, or them clicking through your profile to your website and then doing things, with you, meaning doing business with you. So that is what I call pillar 5. Social selling. There's a strength of your profile and the consistent warm up with your audience that you do, so that when you actually hit them with a LinkedIn message or with an email and anything, guess what? Your reply rates go through the roof. Just to get an idea, our reply rates, because we've been doing this for quite some time, is 10 to 30% across just the 2 channels that we're going to use. Let's say LinkedIn plus email. Email typically is 1 to 5%. LinkedIn is 10 to 30%. But using them both drives the maximum output. But if you layer in other channels, naturally conversion rates keep on going up. And we have a huge TAM, right? So we are a very specific type of a business, I would say, right? Versus other businesses that maybe have TAM constraints, ICP constraints, etc. So, yeah. Awesome. That's all I got for you guys.
We're all bringing home the bacon tonight.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Fantastic. I just have a few questions for you, Frank. People were messaging me. So number 1, within Salesforce, how do you actually generally go about mixing email and LinkedIn on the platform? You kind of said it there based on the audiences. If it's a bigger TAM, let me know if I got this right. If it's a bigger TAM, just kind of target the same people more or less at the same time, but the campaigns don't need to be interlinked. If it's a smaller TAM, try and interlink them. If that is the case, how do you go about that? Is it email first, then LinkedIn?
Oh, good question. So if you have plenty of LinkedIn profiles, you always go with LinkedIn. If you don't have that, you always go with email first, because email scales easier, better, cheaper, faster, whatever. And so because you're gonna get up to 10% reply rates and opt-outs from the list, that means you only have to process 90% of the list on LinkedIn. But yeah, typically always emails first for a typical business. But for unusual businesses like us that somehow have 10, 20, 30 profiles in play, you start with I would start with LinkedIn. By the way, one thing just to be mindful of, actually, if you're using LinkedIn and it's interlinked, you're actually reducing the burn rate of the email infrastructure, because you're reducing the pressure of the email infrastructure. As a result, your email deliverability is better if you actually use LinkedIn. So just something to be aware of. Essentially, your performance on email goes up because you're not always pushing it hard, just like a typical business does it, or a typical agency does it. So yeah.
Okay. And then the next really important question: when are we going to see the next bathtub video skit from Frank?
It should be something in the shower, So yeah, so if somebody is wondering what we're talking about, it's on my featured section, so you can see it's I think the third post. It's what is called a scroll stopper, you know. I don't know, probably this year we have plenty of ideas. Typically the goal of the business is to launch something. It's called creative once a month or twice a month, and that could be literally anything. So you know. Back in I think November, somebody said, "Frank, you'll have to go into a bathtub." I was like, "Okay, cool." So we did a skit in the bathtub, the kind of the thought process around behind sort of creative marketing is that maybe it drives virality, maybe it doesn't. But what creative marketing definitely does is drives what's called brand recall. So recall essentially, people are just a lot more likely to remember you, your name, your brand, your baking emoji, whatever because of that creative component that you had on LinkedIn, rather than having, let's say, a lead magnet. Nobody's going to remember you on LinkedIn because of another lead magnet that you did, or whatever post that you did. But what people will remember you is things like, I'll give you some other random example. Let's take Adam Robinson. Somebody knows him. Is the only pretty much post about I remember about Adam Robinson because it was pretty unique or different. Is the cease and desist by 6 cents. And you just have to know your audience. What are the things that they would remember, when you're engaging with them, right? So you need to know your audience pretty well to understand what resonates and what will make them think about you, even in 5 years, in 10 years, etc. And these have to be, the stuff that you do on LinkedIn or even the emails that you write to people, just different, to anything that they see. And that's where I think the muscle lies in kind of building in, outreach, outbound, GTM engineering, etc. Rather than copying each other, sort of, yeah.
All right, fantastic. If you want to talk to Frank, guys, you can message him in Clay Club Europe in the WhatsApp group, or you can find him on LinkedIn. I'm sure it's not too difficult to get into a conversation with you, Frank. I'm sure you're everywhere. But yeah, I think this is very, very good. Do you agree, guys? All right, fantastic.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, if there's anything I can help, let me know. Otherwise, I shall see you around. WhatsApp, LinkedIn, you name it. Cheerio.
All right.
Thanks,
Adios, my friend.
guys.
Bye.
Good session. Bye.